Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHDF1 and welcome to another episode of the podcast where today, after a week after the Spanish Grand Prix, we are going to be previewing the Monaco Grand Prix of 2019, which starts on Thursday, of course, a Thursday practice, and then gets properly underway with qualifying in the race on Saturday and Sunday next week. So yeah, we're going to preview that Grand Prix, and also because Nib is joining us today and he wasn't around for the Spanish Grand Prix weekend, we'll also quickly get his thoughts. But I just want to say, guys, hopefully you're doing well. And yeah, hopefully you're getting, excited for Monaco. I know Monaco isn't the most exciting of races, but you never know. Monaco can sometimes throw up a surprise and cause mayhem. But yeah, I'll bring Nib in for today's podcast. And yeah, Nib, how are you doing, mate, after the Spanish Grand Prix?
Yeah, I'm doing fairly well. How are you doing yourself, mate?
I'm doing good. I will admit I have had a lot of rest since the Spanish Grand Prix. I know, of course, I uploaded a video about Renault on Thursday, which none of you have seen. It's in the description down below, the link to that video. But yeah, I've just been relaxing really after the Spanish Grand Prix. Now, talking of that Grand Prix, I think we should kind of quickly get this recap over with. So, Nib, I'll just let you talk about what you want to talk about with this Grand Prix.
Yes, so the Spanish Grand Prix was absolutely horrific. One of the worst Grand Prix I've seen in recent time. Probably up there with Spa from last year as one of the worst races, that's for sure. If there wasn't that safety car, which then brought on the brilliant battle between the two Haas's and then Kvyat making a couple of overtakes and all of that stuff, the race would have been absolutely awful. Ferrari are a shambles. How they got their team orders so badly wrong on both occasions. They should have let in the first stint, Leclerc through probably 3 laps earlier than what they did, and then Vettel when Leclerc was on the harder compounded tire, and Vettel was on the softer compounded tire. How they just let Vettel nearly dive down the inside at turn 1 3 laps in a row without letting him through already just boggles my mind. And then they let him through at turn 4. It's like, what on earth are you doing, Ferrari? An utter shambles. Vettel didn't even know that Leclerc was on a different strategy to him when he was catching up to Leclerc. So Ferrari were an utter mess in Spain. They were losing nearly a second in the final sector alone to Mercedes. And if it wasn't for that new engine that they brought, they could have been well towards the midfield. A horrible weekend for Ferrari, showcasing where their car is so poor and they lack downforce, and they have a quite awful understeering car, and they're an utter shambles, and they ain't going to be anywhere close to Mercedes in Monaco, which we will get onto. But Mercedes, their fifth 1-2 of the season, fifth 1-2 in a row. They're an incredible team, and there is an absolute clear and utter reason to see why they are the best team in the sport and have been now for quite some time. And then Red Bull, they were a lot better than I kind of expected. The upgrades did work. They were certainly brought closer to Mercedes and Ferrari. But Max Verstappen, another great job on the weekend to get ahead of the Ferraris and get that third place. But there isn't really much to talk about with Barcelona. It was an awful race, and I don't think we're going to be in for much of a better race in Monaco, which we're going to preview right now.
Yeah, Monaco doesn't promise a better race, I'd say, because at least with Spain you do have that long pit straight, and the DRS opening is earlier than it used to be at the Circuit de Catalunya. But yeah, the race wasn't... I think at the time I thought it was pretty good, the Spanish Grand Prix, compared to what I thought it was going to be, because I'm going to be honest, I thought the Spanish Grand Prix going into race day was not going to be good at all. And it was actually better than I thought it would be, but not massively better. But that's just the way things are, I'm afraid. But yeah, let's now go into our preview for the 2019 Monaco Grand Prix. And we'll start off, of course, with the world champions Mercedes, who have had five consecutive 1-2 finishes, and I can't really bet against them for this Grand Prix. I don't think anyone can. They're so good in the areas, especially at this track, which really matter. They have the best of everything, except I think for the power unit. I still think Ferrari have a better power unit in terms of power output, but everything else Mercedes is the best in. Of course, power does not matter in Monaco, so Mercedes should be at the front, dominating. I don't think they will be, say, absolutely miles ahead of, say, Red Bull, teams like that. But they are going to be comfortably ahead, I think, at the Monaco Grand Prix. Nib, for Mercedes, can you really bet against them getting a 6th, 1-2?
No, you really can't. It's going to take some sort of magical event for Mercedes not to get a 1-2 here, or to certainly at least get pole. I mean, Sector 3 at Barcelona is usually the best preview to who's going to be very good at Monaco. And in Sector 3 of Barcelona, they were half a second quicker than Red Bull and 8 or 9 tenths faster than Ferrari. That's scarily quick. Mercedes are going to be completely and utterly dominant at Monaco, and I really just can't see who is going to challenge them. I don't think anyone will challenge them. If it rains, whether it's dry, whether it's mixed intermediate conditions, nobody will challenge Mercedes at Monaco. And full credit to them. They've absolutely nailed these regulations. They've got everything right, from the aero to just how their team is run, to the new fuel regulations where you're allowed an extra 5 kilograms of fuel. They've nailed that as well. Mercedes are brilliant, and no one will touch them at Monaco.
Also, another thing they have nailed is the tyres, and they seem to be the only team that has actually got that area of the car right, or getting that area working right. So, yeah, they're not going to be beaten in Monaco. I know, we'd love to come into this preview saying, we really don't know what's going to happen with this team. And there are certain teams in the midfield that we don't know what will happen and where they will be. But with Mercedes, they are going to have the best car and are likely going to cruise home for a comfortable 1-2 finish. I hope Red Bull, who we'll get onto soon, are closer to them, but realistically, I think they are set to dominate. But now let's go on to Ferrari. Now, Ferrari are coming off a terrible Spanish Grand Prix. Their season is just getting worse, and it will not get any better in Monaco. In fact, this might be their worst Grand Prix of the season in terms of their performance compared to their big rivals Mercedes, who are going to get pole position most likely. So, yeah, Ferrari, I think, are nailed on to have the third fastest car at best. But I've been saying this plenty of times since the Spanish Grand Prix. They're not going to be that far ahead of the midfield. In fact, they might not even be a part of that top team bracket. They might be in the midfield at Monaco, because everything about their car that you need to be good at Monaco, they don't have that. They don't have the grip that you need to have a good result at Monaco. They don't have it. They just don't have it. So Ferrari are in, I think, for an absolutely god-awful weekend in Monaco. The only way they can come away, I think, with a good result is luck, is, reliability issues for others, crashes. That is the only way Ferrari can come away with this, or come away from this Grand Prix with a successful result. They are in for an absolute shocker in Monte Carlo. And it's also a shame for Charles Leclerc, because, first Monaco Grand Prix at Ferrari a couple months ago, he would have been expecting to come to this race and really be going for the win. But now it looks like the best he could probably get is P4 or P5 at Monaco in qualifying and the Grand Prix. That is a real shame for him. For him to come to Monaco, first Monaco Grand Prix as a Ferrari driver, for him to be not in a position to really compete. And it's also, of course, a shame for Sebastian Vettel. But Nib, for Ferrari, do you think there is a good chance that they will be in the midfield at Monaco?
Well, quite simply put, slower than Renault in the slow corners at Spain, and slower than Haas in the medium speed corners at Barcelona. The, their car, their chassis, their aero is at a midfield level. It's an absolute joke. Ferrari's car this year. I don't know what on earth has happened, because this is certainly not what was seen from Ferrari the last couple of seasons. Their car has been very competitive, and if not one of the best, if not the best, in terms of their aero and their chassis performance. But they're an absolute shambles this year. They're nowhere near Mercedes. In fact, no one is anywhere near Mercedes in any of the corners, except the high speed corners. Ferrari are slightly just ahead of Mercedes, but there's absolutely nothing in it. Ferrari are going to be nowhere near in this race. They're going to have another horrible weekend. They'll be closer to the midfield than they are Red Bull and Mercedes. Red Bull are better than them in the corners. They're the third best team in the corners. If not, if Haas are really giving them a good push in the corners, but in the end, in the straight line, they will pick up some advantage. So I think they will be ahead of Haas. I think they will be in the third fastest team in Monaco, but not that much. They are really under huge pressure here. There's been talk about suspension issues, about now issues with their way they've gone with the front wing. Their whole car concept is being questioned, even by their team principal now. They're in utter shambles at the moment, are Ferrari, and they are under huge pressure to turn this around. They're struggling with tyre temperatures. They're overheating the tyres. Everything that you can pretty much think for Ferrari at the moment, and in these first 5 races that could have gone wrong for them, have gone wrong. They should have won in Bahrain. They had a very good chance to win in Baku, but then their drivers have made mistakes. Their team has made mistakes. There isn't any positives for Ferrari so far this season. It's been an utter disgrace by the team from Maranello.
Yes, it has. But also, Ferrari, of course, they brought their new spec power unit to Spain. Now, they won't actually be using that for Monaco. I think Matteo Binotto confirmed that when he announced that they were bringing a new spec power unit to Spain. So Ferrari are going back to their old power unit for this Grand Prix, which is not a surprise because Monaco doesn't really stress that area of the car that hard. So it's not a surprise, but because of that, that might put, say, Haas closer to them than they were in Spain. But in Spain, Haas weren't that far off. So, yeah, looking absolutely terrible for Ferrari. As Nib said, they are really a disgrace this season to their name. They've been so bad this season. Their best finish, third this season. And after pre-season and after, last season, the season before where they were so good in terms of pace, you have to say 2019 has been a disaster for this team, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon. But before we come to you guys in the chat to ask what you think is going to happen at the top, let me just ask you, go on to Red Bull. Now, Red Bull will absolutely be ahead of Ferrari this week, not this weekend, next weekend. Red Bull, they have a lot better of a car in the corners. I think the Spanish Grand Prix proved that. The Red Bull aerodynamically is comfortably ahead of the Ferrari, I think. When it comes to, say, power, yeah, the Ferrari is a lot better when it comes to that. But when it comes to corners and grip, the Red Bull is easily better than the Ferrari. And Red Bull, I think, should be a comfortable second row at Monaco. The only thing that's going to affect that is whether Pierre Gasly can get the best out of himself and the best out of the car, considering the amount of talent that he does have. If he can, then he should line up on the second row with his teammate Max Verstappen. But if he doesn't, then he might be behind the two Ferraris after qualifying. And as we know, qualifying is so important at this track. You've got to get qualifying right. Hopefully for Gasly he does. But yeah, Red Bull should be lining up on the second row in Monaco and should have the second fastest car on race day as well. Yeah, Nib, for Red Bull, do you agree? Do you think they're going to be comfortably ahead of Ferrari at Monaco?
Yeah, I think they'll be definitely ahead of Ferrari at Monaco. I don't really see how Gasly could be behind any of the Ferraris at Monaco. He's good at Monaco. He showed that last year. He had a great drive at Monaco, and he's just getting better and better as this season progresses. He had a pretty solid Spanish Grand Prix. Of course, he's not going to be there with Max Verstappen. It's been quite clear from the early stage of this season that he's not there at the moment with Max Verstappen. He's improving race by race. It was only the gap was 4 tenths in qualifying, and then in the race, obviously, um, you know, Max was fantastic, and Pierre had a little bit of a tough time, but Pierre's getting better and better in that Red Bull. And yeah, if Red Bull aren't third and fourth, at least lining up on the grid for the race next Sunday, I'd be majorly surprised. That they're much better than Ferrari in the corners. It's clear to see. They're about a tenth and a half quicker in the low speed corners, and then miles ahead in the medium speed corners. They've just got a better car in the corners than Ferrari, and it's a track where horsepower doesn't particularly matter. So unless they get stuck behind a Ferrari, then it will be difficult for them to get past. But if they are ahead of Ferrari after qualifying, I really don't see how Red Bull won't finish third and fourth for the Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah, they really should finish in those positions. And I think Red Bull are maybe not when we come to tracks like Canada and Austria, because those tracks are power tracks. And I think Ferrari, considering how good they are in a straight line, will do well there. But I think as this season goes on, I think Red Bull will progressively, in the constructors, I think they will catch Ferrari and then start to pull away, because I think Red Bull will get better as the season goes on, and also Honda will as well. But before we go on to the midfield, guys, let me know right now in the live chat and also the comments section, for the top teams, what do you think is going to happen for them at Monaco? For Mercedes, do you think they are going to dominate and get another 1-2? For Ferrari, do you think there's a good chance that they could be in the midfield? And for Red Bull, do you think they are comfortably ahead of Ferrari at this track? And do you think Red Bull will eventually catch up to Ferrari and pass them in the constructors, like I honestly at this moment do feel as though they will? Let me know in the comments in the live chat what you think about that. But I just want to say, don't forget to subscribe for more podcast episodes like this, as we do a podcast basically once every 2 weeks between every Grand Prix. So don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or click on my channel name, go to the homepage and subscribe, and also hit the notifications bell for more content like this. But I'll now come to you guys in the live chat for about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll go on to the midfield. Right, let's see what you guys are saying. We've got a couple of people saying bring back Arriva Bene. I said I thought it was a mistake getting rid of him. He wasn't blameless for his part in the 2017 and 2018 failures in terms of not winning the championship or not being closer to winning it than they should have been. But I think there were other people at that team that played a bigger part in that than he did, for sure. Super Vlogger Michael says Verstappen for victory. Alan says, pretty sure constructors are done if it's 1-2. Bonotto is under huge pressure. He really is under massive pressure. And that was kind of my worry for him, is that if things did not go right early on, would he succumb to that pressure? And I think the next couple months are really going to tell us whether he will succumb to that pressure or not. Right, let me read some more comments. Matt Stanek says Max will crash. Let's hope not, because he could definitely be on the podium at this Grand Prix. Tonka Toy Truck says, if Ferrari has struggled with the new aero regulations, imagine what the small teams have had to deal with. I'm not quite sure I understand your point there. Maybe you can elaborate, but yeah, I'm not quite sure what your point there is. Let me just look at some more comments here. Dexter Hall, hey Chaz, what did I miss? We've only just previewed the top teams for the Monaco Grand Prix. And yeah, it's going to be basically kind of more of the same of what you saw on race day in Spain for the pace in Monaco, I think. We'll have F1, both Mercedes and Verstappen on the podium. Ferrari battling Gasly. Yeah, it does look likely that Ferrari, the best they can do is really compete with Pierre Gasly. I don't think they'll be close to Max Verstappen, honestly, in the entire weekend, honestly. Right, let me find a couple more. Nicholas Kerban says Ferrari need a total rebuild before they can win again. They do. They absolutely do. I think their decision to get rid of Arriva Bene, it was a very simple decision in terms of its simple-mindedness of how they made the decision. They thought if they just simply removed Arriva Bene and put Binotto in his place, that would magically put Ferrari at the top. That's not how it works. If you're failing in the way Ferrari have for the last couple years, it's not as simple as just replacing one person. It takes more than that. And you know what? I think people have said this a lot over the past couple of weeks, but Ferrari are kind of similar to Manchester United, because Manchester United have had this similar issue where they think replacing one person is simply going to magically put them back where they should be. That's not the case. It takes a lot of work to put, or takes a lot of changes in certain positions to really, you know, turn. Yeah, I know. To try and put that team or that franchise, whatever you want to call it, back to where it should be. It's not as simple as just replacing one person. If it was that easy, everyone would just replace one person in their team to magically put themselves back to where they should be, or, you know, up the field. It's not as simple as that. Ferrari need, I think now, considering that 2019 is already, and it will go down as a disaster, and I think 2020 won't be that much better for Ferrari. I think Ferrari, what they should do now is really focus on what they want their team to look like 2021 and after that. How do they want their team to look? That's what they've got to focus on now, because Mercedes, you can guarantee they already have a plan of who they want in that car when Lewis Hamilton goes, or even when Valtteri Bottas is dropped from the team. And they already have the management in place to be successful even after Lewis Hamilton or Valtteri Bottas goes. So I think Ferrari really need to start rebuilding the team. Not massively. I don't think they are, you know, in a McLaren type situation where they need to have a massive 4 to 5 year rebuild. But they definitely do need to rebuild in certain areas, because if they continue doing the same things they're doing now, they're not going to go anywhere. And of course, you know, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is literally insanity. Right, let me read out one final comment and then we'll go on to the midfield. Matt Stanek says, if Sergio Marchionne was still with us, he would have still backed Arriva Bene. That is wrong, because Marchionne, the reason Binotto replaced Arriva Bene is another reason, is because Marchionne was going to make that decision anyway. It was kind of a thing that the new boss of Ferrari, John Elkann, had to do, because it was kind of, dare I say, Marchionne's dying wish for the team that Binotto take over as the team boss. So you can't say that Marchionne would have made things different. He made that appointment, so he also does kind of have to share responsibility for that. But anyway, let's now go on to the midfield and go on to Renault, who are absolutely terrible right now. You have to say they are terrible compared to where they should be and where they even were last year. Last year, they were in a better position on the grid at the Spanish Grand Prix and really at the first 5 races so far compared to last year. Last year, they were in better positions almost every time than they have been so far this year. So, not looking good for Renault. And I don't think in Monaco things will be that much better. I don't think they'll be as bad as they were in Baku and in certain areas at the Spanish Grand Prix. But they're not going to be at the front of the midfield, I don't think. I think they're going to be in that, say, 10th, 11th place kind of area at best. I don't think they have a car that can be up there in P7 and P8. I just don't see it. The Renault car is not good enough in the areas where they need it to be right now. Front to rear, not enough downforce. Tyres are not working for them. And really, they're in not a massive crisis, but they're in a mini crisis for now. But yeah, they're not looking that good, I think, Renault, coming into this Grand Prix. Nib, for Renault, do you think they can bounce back in Monaco and really get going in this constructors fight for P4? Or will they really falter again like they did in Baku and Barcelona?
I think if you look at the car performance of where Renault were in Spain, they'll be very close to the front of the midfield. Where Renault have been losing out is really in a straight line compared to everyone else in the midfield. They've got their third slowest in a straight line. If you have a look at the power car performance little graphic that I've got here with me, so Renault, they won't be struggling as much and losing as much time in a straight line, of course, because of just because of the nature of the Monaco Grand Prix circuit. I think they will be close to the front of the midfield, but I don't know. Monaco is a really big unknown because of how will the tires perform on each car individually. You know, Monaco is just going to be absolutely bonkers with the midfield. This is where everyone's going to be watching during the whole weekend of the Monaco Grand Prix. Is the midfield, the battle between Haas, between Renault, between Mclaren. It's going to be super super close. And Toro Rosso, I've got to say Toro Rosso, because they were really good in Spain. It's going to be between those couple of teams, and I must say they were really really bad in Spain. And if it wasn't for Daniel Ricciardo's qualifying performance on Saturday, which was fantastic, um, it would have been even worse. But ultimately, his own mistake in Baku ended up probably costing him a points finish. Of course, he was stuck behind Carlos Sainz for quite some time in the race. And yeah, Renault just had an absolute, a very poor start to the season. But, at Monaco, I think it will be better than what it is at Barcelona, because it does just suit their car a lot more. But I still don't think they'll be the quickest team in the midfield.
If I was to guess right now, based on Renault and how they're looking at the moment, I would say they're going to be around 5th or 6th fastest in the midfield. I agree with you. I think in terms of lap time, they're not going to be that far off the front of the midfield. It might even be a 10th or 2, but I think in terms of position, they might lose out and end up being a 10th or 11th. But definitely in terms of pure lap time, it is going to be so close, and it really will come down to the drivers in the midfield in terms of where you start in the Grand Prix and whether you really get the lap together that leads on to a successful Monaco Grand Prix. Now let's go on to McLaren, who had, I think, a very good 2019 Spanish Grand Prix, considering where they qualified and where they started the Grand Prix from and where they were looking going into that Grand Prix. So great for them. They are still P4 in the Constructors, and they've actually pulled away from Racing Point, who are still in P5. So great for them. Monaco, though, I don't think Monaco is going to be... I think McLaren are going to be kind of similar to Renault. They're not going to be great, but they're going to be definitely right in there, again, around P10, P11, really fighting away for points. I think, Carlos Sainz, normally Carlos is very good at Monaco. Lando Norris, not so much if you look at the F2 race last season, but yeah, I think Carlos Sainz will be very good at Monaco because he normally is. And I think McLaren, are definitely going to be in that fight with, as you said, Nib, Haas, Toro Rosso, teams like that. But I think, honestly, they are going to be about the same as Renault. For McLaren, Nib, do you think they are going to be the same as Renault and be very, very close in that battle for the front of the midfield?
Well, yes, with McLaren, they're a little bit worse than Renault in the corners, but it's in the straights where McLaren are really good compared to the rest of the midfield. They're in fact second in terms of their performance in a straight line compared to everyone else with the data that I've got in front of me. So McLaren, I think they will struggle a little bit more compared to the Spanish Grand Prix. And I don't think they had a tremendous Spanish Grand Prix. You know, Carlos Sainz did very well after the safety car, of course, after the contact between Lando Norris and Lance Stroll. So I think they'll be slightly behind Renault for the Monaco Grand Prix. it is so difficult to say where these teams are going to be because they are all so close together, and even teams like Force India and Sauber really aren't that far behind. As you said, it really is going to be down to the drivers, and Lando Norris wasn't that great in Spain. You know, he's obviously had a very good start to the season, has Lando Norris, but he'll be hoping for some better performances by himself, of course, after he had that crash with Stroll. So it'll be an interesting weekend for McLaren, of course, with that Seidel have now, of course, joining the team from Barcelona. Great to see him in the paddock. I really think he will take McLaren in the right direction, and it's going to be really interesting this week. Sorry, next week, and I fell into the trap there, but um, it will be very close, the midfield. There's no doubt about that. But I think McLaren will be probably sixth or fifth fastest this weekend, challenging with Renault mainly.
Yeah, it's going to be, as you said, very close. But also, I will say it is great to see that McLaren have now got the technical director, James Key, finally at the team, and Andreas Seidel, who his debut as a team principal for McLaren was the Spanish Grand Prix, and it was a pretty good one for him. Um, so yeah, it's good to see McLaren now have those pieces in place, and now they can hopefully develop as the season goes on. But I will say, for McLaren, if they can start to just continue to get those points and continue to slightly pull away from other teams in the midfield, you never know, they could be a very, very strong contender for P4 on the constructors. And I think given how 2019 has gone so far, I think McLaren's aim now has to be P4 in the constructors because they have two good drivers, a good car, and a better looking team than they had a year ago. And I think honestly, they can get P4 on the constructors, and that should absolutely be their aim for this season. But now let's go on to Alfa Romeo, who in Barcelona were terrible, to be honest. They had a terrible car. Kimi Raikkonen has been very good this season, but even he could not get that car anywhere near really the top 10 in terms of pure pace. They were absolutely awful. And I think Alpha with Racing Point, as we'll get onto later, I think they are going to be at the back end of the midfield for sure because their car aerodynamically just isn't good enough. Really, it just hasn't got enough aerodynamic grip where it is needed to be good at Monaco. So I think Alpha will be at best P14, P15. I think the only way they can have a better lap than that is if there is crashes ahead, or if Kimi Raikkonen or Antonio Giovinazzi pull out a banging lap in qualifying. But right now, I'd have to say Alpha, I think, are going to be at the back end of the midfield with Racing Point. For Alpha Nib, do you agree? Do you think Alpha are going to be at the back end of the midfield? Because in Barcelona, you have to say, their aerodynamic or lack of aerodynamic grip was really shown up at that track, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed. The Alfa Romeo has shown that sort of concept with the front wing, much like um, Ferrari, is certainly not the way to go if you want front end downforce. They were awful in the slow and medium speed corners, and at Monaco, where all the corners are basically low and medium speed corners, I don't see really Alpha challenging for in the top 10 at all. I think Kimi Räikkönen will probably just sneak into Q2, but I think that Giovinazzi will be knocked out in Q1, and then I don't see Alfa Romeo having much of a better result in the race whatsoever. It's going to be certainly an uphill struggle for Alfa Romeo next weekend in Monaco.
Yeah, it will. Their car, if you look at it on board, it just doesn't look like a car that gives up that much grip to the drivers. It's not that great of a car. I think in a straight line and at power tracks, it's a very good car, but here, it won't go well at all. The one car that might go well is Haas. Now, I will say though, they were great in Spain and they did have the best car in the midfield, and they were very close to to a couple drivers in the top teams in qualifying especially, but I'm kind of at a 50-50 with Haas coming into this weekend, because the tyres, by the way, for Monaco are the softest compounds for this Monaco Grand Prix. So we've got C5, C4 and C3. As we know, Haas do not like the softer compound of tyres, but also Haas last year at Monaco was so poor, and they've never really been that good at this track. But at the Barcelona track, they were very good. So I kind of don't know what to say about Haas. I need to really see where they are in practice to determine where they're going to be. If I was going to say now where they're going to be, I'd say one car in the top 10 and one car outside. But honestly, I don't know what to say about Haas, because they could end up at the back of the midfield or the front of the midfield, because they are a very up and down team. And given their performance last year in Monaco with very soft tyres, I'll be honest, I don't really know what to expect. For Haas, Nib, do you think they are definitely going to be towards the front of the midfield, or do you agree with me that because of previous performances on really soft tyres and at this track, do you think they're going to be, lower in that midfield?
Well, I think everything you just said right there summed up my exact thoughts about this team. If you go back and if you just take what they did at Barcelona, you'd think absolutely they're going to be the fourth fastest team. But we know that they struggle with the tyres around this circuit. We know that they struggle with the tyres when they can't get in the right temperature this year. So we just don't know where Haas are going to be coming into the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. We we really don't. I think they'll be quicker than what they were at Monaco last year. That will be some achievement if they're not. Sorry. But Haas, they're just an unknown quantity. They're doing that yo-yoing that they like to do, that they've done ever since they've joined the sport, especially last 2 years when they've been fairly competitive. They're doing that yo-yoing thing where they're good at one track and then they're not good at another, and then they're good at one track. They're just doing this once again to us. So Haas, I really have no idea what they're gonna give us this weekend. Sorry, next weekend. Did it again.
It's so
Um,
hard to not do that.
it is. But might I just say, Rich Energy, what a joke.
Yeah. Um, if anyone has not seen their Twitter account, I suggest after this podcast is finished, please go to their Twitter and look at their latest tweets, because how that company is treated as a serious company, I do not know. I don't understand what Rich Energy one is trying to be, and I don't know what they really are as a company, but they're definitely a weird company. But yeah, as you said, Haas, it could be amazing, could be terrible. We'll just have to see in Monaco. Next up, Toro Rosso. I'm going to say this now. I think they're going to have the best car in the midfield. It will be very close with teams like Renault, Mclaren, and teams like that. But I think, given how they were in Barcelona and given how they've been this season, I think Toro Rosso are going to be at the front of the midfield. Also, Danny Kvyat is, I think, very good here. I think he had a couple good top 10 qualifying positions in the past, and I remember him finishing and qualifying P4, I think, in 2015 for Red Bull. So Danny Kvyat is very good at this track. Toro Rosso normally are good at this track as well. So yeah, I think given how they were at the last Grand Prix, and they were very good on race day, and I think also Danny Kvyat was very, very unlucky not to finish P7, given that he passed K-Mag on track, but then lost it in the pit stop. So I think Kvyat was quite unfortunate to only finish down in P9 when he should have finished at the front of the midfield, given how everything happened and how quick the Toro Rosso was. But yeah, I think Toro Rosso are going to be at the front of the midfield, and I'm going to call it now. I wouldn't be surprised if Toro Rosso weren't that far off Italy's most famous Formula One team, Ferrari. I wouldn't be surprised if they were, say, quarter of a second or third of a second off. Maybe even closer. We'll see in Monaco. But yeah, I think Toro Rosso are really going to be good at this Grand Prix. Nib, do you share my opinion on that?
I think they'll be close with the other midfield teams. I don't think they'll be quite at the midfield, sorry, at the front of the midfield. I must say, Danny Kvyat at the Spanish Grand Prix, some absolutely fantastic overtakes. But of course, that was Alexander Albon. If you're David Croft, I just say, you know, usually we are very critical of Crofty on this channel, but I want to give an extra shout out to Crofty for the Spanish Grand Prix. He was absolutely horrific. He was calling every single driver the wrong driver. He's like, here you go, Charles Leclerc down the inside, and it's Vettel. You know, it's like, come on, man. It's not that hard. You get paid a lot of money to be a commentator, and you can't even tell which driver is which. When it's very easy, you just look at the roll hoop. You can even see from the helmet or their number which driver it is. I know that it's a high pressure situation up in the commentary box. You're going and your mind's moving at 100 mile an hour, but he was very poor last weekend. I might just say. So I think so Kvyat was fantastic at Spain. Sorry to go off that little crofty tangent, but yes, Kvyat was fantastic. A brilliant move. I think it was down the inside at turn 4. He did a couple of moves at turn 4, I think it was. So I think they will be there in the midfield, but maybe not quite at the top of the midfield. You know, I don't think I think most of the midfield teams won't be that far off Ferrari next weekend at Monaco, but I don't think that Toro Rosso will be quite at the front of the midfield.
Can I just ask, so about Crofty, so when Kvyat was racing Grosjean and Sainz and other drivers, was he calling Kvyat Albon the entire time or just a couple times?
It was when he made that move on Hulkenberg at turn 4.
Oh, that, right.
He was calling, yeah. So like, not when there's like 100 million cars around either. It was like very it's very clear that it was Kvyat, and then it like took him a replay to then realize that it was Danny Kvyat. Yeah, it was quite bad.
As well, do you remember in Bahrain, he made that mistake where Lewis Hamilton on radio said I think Hamilton said the gearbox feels clunky, and somehow, David Croft of Sky Sports F1 thought he said Bottas is very cocky. How does that sound the same? Even if it's muffled. He either needs to go, see his doctor and get a checkup on his ears or something, or he, as you said, just is really crumbling under the pressure of being on live TV. And of course now Sky F1 is the exclusive home of F1 in the UK in terms of live races. I think Channel 4 only has Silverstone live. So maybe that's why he's been so bad. But that in Bahrain, oh my God. How you could interpret that like that. How he got from point A to point B, I don't get that. I don't get that at all. Right, let's move on to Racing Point. And basically, I'm going to say the same for Racing Point that I said for Alfa. They're going to be at the back of the midfield. Their car did not look that good, really, in Barcelona. I think they might be ahead of Alfa, honestly, in Monaco. only slightly, but I don't think Racing Point realistically have that great of a chance of finishing in the top 10. I just don't see how Racing Point have a good enough car to do that. So yeah, Nib, for Racing Point, do you think they're going to be basically the same as Alfa?
Well, I think it would be very good if their car stop ended up in the wall after every single practice session. That would be a start. Yes, Lance Stroll, I'm talking about you, sir. But yeah, I think they will be with Alfa Romeo. Those two teams are kind of showing themselves at track where you need a good car. That they are probably the worst two teams in the midfield. Of course, with them got Williams. But yeah, I don't really expect too much from Racing Point next weekend. They just don't have a good enough car at the moment. Of course, they've been struggling because they've had brought their new car and then they brought a whole bunch of upgrades and they haven't really quite worked out for the team. So they're struggling a little bit at the moment. I do expect them to get better and closer towards the rest of the midfield as the season progresses. But at the moment, yeah, they are struggling quite a bit, and you can't really expect them to do too much when one car is in the wall more often than not.
And also, that car cannot get out of Q1 to save their lives. I know,
Yes.
I know last year Stroll was in the Williams and he had an excuse, but this year I'm afraid he does not have one. I know at Barcelona the car was bad, but how he is still getting or ending up in those positions, I don't get how he can be that bad in qualifying. And honestly, I think Lance Stroll has to be one of the worst drivers I've ever seen when it comes to qualifying. And also, the most different driver from qualifying to a race that I've ever seen. I've never seen a difference like that. Honestly, it's incredible how he can go from
He turns into Fernando Alonso at the start.
Exactly. Yeah, and also in terms of how he progresses during a Grand Prix, look at Baku. He flew up to, what was it, P9 and stayed there, but in qualifying, he just cannot do anything right. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's not getting the tyres warmed up. Maybe he just doesn't like qualifying as much as a race situation, but he really is the worst driver in the field for qualifying. There is no doubt about that. Absolutely terrible. But yeah, that is Racing Point. And finally is Williams, and who cares? Right. So let's move on to our predictions for Monaco, and the man on screen is the man I'm going for race victory in Monaco. So for qualifying, it will be Hamilton on pole, Bottas second, Verstappen third, and it'll be the exact same for the race. I wish I could go for a more exciting order, but honestly, that is what I think is genuinely going to happen. I'm being as realistic as possible. And Nib, I wouldn't be surprised if you go for the exact same.
Indeed, yep. So pole, Hamilton, second will be Valtteri Bottas, third will be Max Verstappen, and the exact same in the race. So winning the Monaco Grand Prix for me, Lewis Hamilton, second place Valtteri Bottas, and third place Max Verstappen. It's going to take some sort of major surprise or something crazy to happen into turn one. For that not to be the case. So yeah, I think that's going to be happen. That's what's just going to happen. Lewis is fantastic at Monaco, always has been. I don't see Bottas. I think Bottas will challenge him. We're seeing that the Bottas is challenging Hamilton at pretty much every single race. I think he will challenge him for pole, but I think Hamilton in the end will ultimately be too good and take pole. And then because the run down to turn one is about 3 centimeters to turn one from where you start, I don't see how Bottas could get ahead of Hamilton into turn one. And then after that, unless you keep it out the wall, it is pretty much race over. So, yep, Hamilton to win the race for me from Bottas and Verstappen.
Absolutely. I don't think you can really go for anything different, but we'll come to you guys in the live chat in the comments to see what you guys think will happen. Make sure to put your predictions for the Monaco Grand Prix of 2019 that is happening, of course, next weekend. Make sure to put them in the chat or the comments, and I'll read out as many as I can before we go on to the Q&A for about 15 minutes at the end of this podcast episode. So, let me see what you guys are saying. Super vlogger Michael says Hamilton on pole, Bottas for the win, Hamilton second, and Verstappen in third. Another thing, the only other way I see a surprising result happening is if we get a safety car at the wrong time for a certain driver or drivers that have not pitted or have pitted yet. That's the only way I really see the order being shook up. But yeah, I don't think the top three will be different than that. I don't see it. Annette says Bottas for pole and victory, and Hamilton second, Max third. Games Donovan says after Monaco, I predict I will see another 5 videos on YouTube with the title "Is F1 Boring?" This is the thing though, is Monaco and Spain, you're not coming into those races expecting good races anyway. That's not to excuse the races, but we know what Monaco is going to be. The only way Monaco will be different is if we have a couple safety cars, maybe a red flag if we get a 2013 situation, the barriers blocking the track or something ridiculous like that. So, yeah, Monaco is basically Baku, except you can't pass. The only way you can get a properly interesting and competitive race that has some surprises if there is a safety car. Baku's the same. The only way we get exciting races at Baku is if there is a safety car. So I think Monaco, the only way you're going to get a different order to what is likely to happen is if we have, a couple safety cars. Super Vlogger Michael says Bottas for fastest lap. Grace Lord says Hamilton from Verstappen and Bottas. I wonder if anyone's daring enough to go for a Ferrari on the podium. I don't think anyone will. Let me just read out these comments about Crofty. Annette says, oh my god, Crofty was awful. Mario Master says, Crofty was hilarious. They were so confident that it was Albon. And Annette says, Crofty was so convinced it was Albon. Let me find some more here. Will F1 hashtag Crofty out, hashtag Clarkson in.
Tom Clarkson, of course.
Right, let me find a couple more. Bat Boot, Hamilton, Bottas, Max qualifying in the race. Yeah, I don't think anyone can really go for anything different because it's pretty clear who is at the top going to have the best cars and who is going to be quick. In the midfield, it's very hard to predict, but at the top, it's very easy, honestly. But I think now we will move into the Q&A. So make sure, guys, to put in for the next 15 minutes or so, put in your best questions and me and Nib will answer them for the next 15 minutes or so. But I just want to say, don't forget to subscribe for more podcast episodes like this as we do the podcast every 2 weeks, basically, once every 2 weeks. So don't forget to subscribe for that. Bottom right of the screen, you do it right there. Or click on my channel name, go to my homepage and subscribe. And also, hit this video with a like. But I just want to ask you, Nib, we have had the news of the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort for 2020. I'm not going to give my opinion right now fully because I'm actually going to make a video about it pretty soon. Not in the next week or so, but it will be coming out pretty soon about what my thoughts are about it and whether it'll work or not. But for you, are you excited, or do you think that the cons outweigh the pros in terms of this race actually working?
Well, I think if you were to attend the Grand Prix, I think you would be having the time of your life, partying with the hundreds of thousands of Dutch on the beach in Zandvoort. But in terms of racing and what we're going to see on the television, I don't think there is much hope for the Grand Prix in that way. It's certainly a very good way to get a lot of money using the popularity of Max Verstappen and, of course, having a old classic track back on the calendar. But I don't think the racing will be much good at all. Who knows? The rules, of course, could change in 2021 and make things better. But I don't think I hold much hope for a fantastic race in 2020.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear why Liberty have gone to Zandvoort. It's pretty clear. It's because of the Max Verstappen fans and the money they're going to earn from that. But yeah, if you look at the track, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure if in the long term this is going to be a great thing. But I will say, I hope that this track, unless it's replacing the Russian Grand Prix track, I hope it's not replacing another track because, as I said, I think in my race review for Spain, that if you're going to replace a track with, one track with another, you've got to make sure the replacement is quite a bit better. I don't think Zandvoort, in terms of racing, will be better than the Circuit de Catalunya, so that's why I think Zandvoort might as well just be added alongside that track. So hopefully that's what they do going forward. And yeah, hopefully, past 2021 the rules work and we can have great racing at Zandvoort, but my hopes are not very, very high. But yeah, make sure in the chat, guys, to get your questions going, and I'll read out some now. So let's start off with Games Donovan. Will Hulkenberg ever see the podium? Is it too late? I honestly don't think he'll ever get a podium. I don't see it because, one, I don't think he'll ever be really in a good enough car to do so. Two, whenever he has had the opportunity to get a podium, he has blown his opportunity. Think back to Brazil in 2012. And I don't think, honestly, he's one of those drivers like a Daniel Ricciardo that if he does get the chance, he will go out there and get that podium. I don't think Hulkenberg is genuinely good enough to get a podium. I don't think he is. So I don't think he will ever get a podium. I think he will set a record by the end of his career for never having or for going the longest without a podium. I think that's what the record is. Can Ferrari win in Montreal? That's from Andrew Drury. Nib, I'll let you answer that. I'm going to say no, but I'll let you answer more so on that.
No, there are too many corners for Ferrari to lose time, and if there were more straights in Montreal, possibly, I think the best chance for Ferrari to next win a race would have to be in Austria, because there are so many straights in Austria. There are barely any corners. Well, there are 8 or 9 corners at Austria, so I really think that Austria is the next best chance for Ferrari to win.
And also, as you were saying earlier, Ferrari in the fast corners are right there as one of the best, if not the best, team. And if you look at Austria, when you get to the middle and final sector, they are mostly fast corners. So yeah, Austria, I think, is probably the best opportunity, one of the best opportunities they have in 2019 to really go for the win. I think the other is Monza, of course. I think Silverstone Ferrari can be competitive because Silverstone now, with the way the cars are aerodynamically, is basically a power track. I mean, you barely have to slow down at all. You only have to slow down for what? Turn 3 and 4 and I think Luffield as well. But that's it, really. So, yeah, Austria, Silverstone, Monza, I wouldn't say Spa at all. Maybe Suzuka, because Suzuka is also very fast, but then again, Mercedes is very good there. But yeah, not looking great, honestly, for Ferrari to get a win this season. I think their chances are quite small after what happened in Spain. Really put my opinion of Ferrari really down. Hello to JB in the chat. Great to see you here. James Donovan asks, where would you like a new track built? You know what? I'd have to say, given that we just talked about it, Holland. What they should have done is build a new track in Holland that is going to get good racing, and then you'll get the fans. But if you look at the tracks that are there in Holland right now, there's no tracks in terms of will they produce overtakes and good racing. There's no good tracks at the moment in Holland. Assen is designed for MotoGP. and Zandvoort is very, very old. It looks like it's been frozen in time, basically, since the mid-70s. It's a very old track. It's a very old area of Holland, it looks like, anyway. So yeah, if they built a new, purpose-built racetrack that did promise good racing, and the fans came, which they would, then I think that would be great. But I don't think that is going to happen because, one, it costs a lot of money to build a new track, and also I don't think people in Holland, in terms of the motorsport people, are really interested in building a new racetrack. Grace Lord, do you think that Ocon will replace Bottas next year after Bottas' great form this year? No, I don't think he will. I think Ocon... I think if Bottas maintains a championship challenge against Lewis Hamilton until, say, Russia or Suzuka, at least, I think that's enough for Valtteri to stay at Mercedes absolutely for 2020. But already I think Bottas has done enough. So, yeah, there you go. JB, yeah, we have said who will win Monaco. We both think Lewis Hamilton. Let me find some more here. Seirugara says, I think Ferrari can win in Monaco because in 2017 and 2018 Mercedes were terrible there and Verstappen not good at Monaco. Yeah, we have to disagree because I understand what your point is and I understand where you're coming at it from, and I've been guilty of doing the same, looking at the previous year's race and thinking, well, it's going to be the same. But if you look at 2019 so far, we have had enough races to detect where people were strong and not so strong. Ferrari do not have the type of car they had last year and in 2017 compared to the other teams to win the race. They don't have it at all. So Ferrari, and he says 20% chance for Ferrari to win. I think 0% for Ferrari to win. They have absolutely not a chance in hell of winning that Grand Prix. But yeah. Let me see if I missed any, because I think I did skip over a couple. Will F1, Ferrari should be more competitive from Austria to Italy, apart from Hungary. Maybe Hockenheim and Spa, Austria, Silverstone, Italy more likely. Yep, I made that point, and that is true. Let me see if there's any more here. Hey Chaz, do you think Max is equal to Lewis in the wet? Oh, that's tough. I'm going to say Lewis for now, but I think it's very close. Nib, do you think Max is on a par with, or if not better than Lewis in the wet?
Obviously, we will talk about how good Max's race in Brazil in the wet. I can't remember what year it was. Was it 2016?
2016,
yeah. It definitely
yeah.
was, because it was Rosberg's last season. I do remember that. But obviously we're seeing how good Max is in the wet, but Lewis has been doing it for such a long time now. Max is certainly number 2 to Lewis in the wet, but for me, you still have to give it to Lewis because he's done it for such a long time and has been consistent for well over a decade now in being quick in the wet.
Yep, I'd have to agree. JB, do you think Ocon will get a seat in 2020? I honestly don't know right now. The only place I can see him going to is Williams. Maybe Haas if they cut a deal with Haas and Haas get rid of Romain Grosjean if Grosjean is still not performing as well as he could do. But honestly, I don't know right now. And even though Williams, I think are probably going to drop Kubica, honestly. I think Kubica will not be in Formula 1 next year. I just have this feeling that he won't be. I don't think Ocon is a guarantee to replace him because there is a driver that was testing for Mercedes after the Barcelona Grand Prix in testing that does have quite a bit of money, is currently in Formula 2, And yeah, he is connected to Mercedes at the moment, and that is Nikita Mazepin. So I think that could be a driver that ends up in that car because, well, he will have money to give to the team, and it's a shame to say that, but that's the position Williams are in. Right, let me see.
Can I just answer something from
Yeah, go on.
Serigara? He says, or they say that Verstappen is not that good in Monaco. Apart from 2017, where on another day it could have been better, he's been quite poor. Yes, Max has made lots of mistakes at Monaco in the past. He was quicker than Ricciardo last year at Monaco. If he didn't make that mistake in FP3, I believe he probably would have taken pole from Ricciardo. In my honest opinion, he's probably about 10th quicker than Ricciardo that whole entire weekend. If Max doesn't make mistakes at Monaco, he will be fine. And whenever we see Max Verstappen actually make a proper big mistake recently, I can't remember massive mistakes from Max Verstappen in quite some time now, off the top of my head. I think his last big major mistake was that crash in FP3 at Monaco. He's really come on leaps and bounds as a driver since that mistake in Monaco, and I don't see him repeating the same mistakes that he's made at Monaco in previous years next weekend.
Yeah, and I think you have to say, since last year, and if you remember this time last year, Max was in a very difficult position because he made so many mistakes. He cost himself 2 race victories at Monaco and Shanghai. And yeah, he was in a very difficult position, but I don't think you can equate this year's Max to last year's, because if you look at this year, Max has got the best out of the Red Bull car. He really has got the best out of that car. And I think you could make an argument that Max has been the best driver this season because he has been super, super quick, has done, I think, the best he could do. And I don't think Lewis Hamilton, for example, who is in the lead of the Drivers' Championship, I don't think Hamilton has been quite at his best so far in 2019. I think there has been a couple races or qualifying sessions where Lewis has not quite been at it. So Max has been absolutely fantastic this season, and I don't think you can really compare the two. You know, the Max pre-Monaco 2018 and the current Max going into Monaco 2019. I don't really think you can compare them because I think they are completely different now. And it is right you say, Nib. When was the last time Max made a mistake? I can't actually, the last time he did was when he broke his suspension at Kota in qualifying. That's the last mistake, and that was quite a small one over the Verstappen curb, you'll remember. That was the last error I can remember him making, but before that, I think it was Monaco and FP3. So it shows you how Max has come on really leaps and bounds ever since the Monaco Grand Prix of 2018. Right, will answer a couple more, and then we'll come off the stream. Alan Giao asks, do you think Honda will get a win before the summer, as Helmut Marko put it? That's difficult to say. It really depends on Red Bull. I mean, of course, it does depend on Honda and whether they make the progress that they're hoping to make and that Red Bull hoping that for them to make. But it also does depend on Red Bull improving the aerodynamics in the chassis. If Red Bull continue to make the improvements that they normally do during the season, and they make the improvements at certain races like they did for the Spanish Grand Prix, then they could, but I think it's a lot more likely they're going to win a race after the summer break, because by then their car really should be very strong. Maybe not right there with Mercedes at every Grand Prix, but at certain races they should be right there with them. Singapore, Mexico, Kota, tracks like that. Right, let me find a final comment that we'll both answer, then we'll come to the end of the stream. And the final comment goes to Sebastian. Where do you think Ferrari can challenge for a win? I think Canada. As I've said, Austria. That's the next place they can go for the win. But honestly, at this point, I'm not sure they're going to win a race in 2019. And actually, I'm going to say it right now. I don't think they will. I don't think they will win a race. I don't think their car's good enough. I think, yeah, in a straight line they're great, but you need more than that to win a race. You can't just be great in a straight line, that's it. We don't race at Indy in Formula One. So, yeah, I think Ferrari won't win a race. I think they'll go winless, just like 2016. Nib, do you think Ferrari will win a Grand Prix this season? I don't see it.
I think they will win a few races this season. You know, they quite possibly, if they had achieved the maximum out of their car, they could have quite possibly won 2 races already. Have I gone robotic, by the way? No. Okay, we're good. Back on Discord.
No, you're
Sorry,
all good.
It come up with the red little thing. I was just a bit worried that I'd gone robotic. But I believe that their best chance is really at Austria. You know, the place where they were losing most of their time last year was in the high speed corners at that track, the last sector, and they're pretty much level with Mercedes in the high speed corners, as are most of the teams. I might just add, even Williams are only losing like about half a tenth through the high speed corners. It's quite remarkable how close everyone is in the high speed corners. And then the gaps are just massive in the low and medium speed corners. But for me, where they could possibly win is Austria, Silverstone, because it's just such a pure power track now. You're basically on the throttle for about 70% of the lap, which is ridiculous. They could have a chance at Spa. Who knows? They could gain a second in the first sector if their engine is really that ridiculously good. Italy, of course, they could win, but apart from that, I really don't see any other tracks where they could win. Ferrari just really are that bad.
Yeah, I think. And by the way, it's interesting you say that about the teams in the fast corners. That hopefully should mean we should have a very close field at Austria and also Silverstone. I'm hoping Austria, because Austria, of course, is a very small lap. Ferrari will be good at those tracks, but I think, honestly, as a team, I don't think they will get the result that they should get. I just don't think they're in that kind of position yet. I think they are really just, when it comes to races or race day, they never go forward, really. They always tend to go backwards. And I think even if they had a great qualifying and had a front row at an Austria, that they would somehow mess it up. But there you go. But there you go, guys. That is episode 37 of the ChazzaHDF1 podcast from me and Nib, previewing the 2019 Monaco Grand Prix, which of course is next weekend. I'll get into the content coming up on the channel in the next week in just a moment, but I just want to say thank you again to Nib for coming along, and good news, you'll be around, I think, for qualifying and race day in Monaco, won't you?
Yes, I will indeed. Of course, always great to be on the podcast. Of course, looking forward to the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. You know, maybe the race won't be most exciting, but it's still Monaco at the end of the day. It is fantastic. But yes, of course, always great to be on the podcast, and thanks for having me as per usual.
No problem. Great to have you on. But before I go, guys, I just want to get into the content coming up on the channel. So, 2 videos I'm hoping to get out before Thursday practice in Monaco is one this week in F1. That will be out on Tuesday. That will be the next video on the channel on Tuesday. This week in Formula 1, where we'll look at the Dutch Grand Prix news. We'll look at other pieces of news in Formula 1, such as Formula 1 possibly going to Marrakesh for a Grand Prix and returning to Africa. We'll look at that as well in the next episode of This Week in F1 and the next video. That'll be on Tuesday at 12 PM. We are hoping to get out our tech video after the Spanish Grand Prix, or post-Spanish Grand Prix tech video. We're hoping to get that out either the day before Thursday practice in Monaco, or the day in between Thursday practice and qualifying day, where of course there is a day off. One of those days we will have that video looking at the new pieces of aerodynamic parts and stuff like that for all the cars, or for most of the cars. And of course, next weekend is Monaco. I will be live for the Practice 2 watch along on Thursday afternoon for the Monaco Grand Prix Practice 2 session. Then we'll do the same for qualifying on Saturday, and then the qualifying review will be on Saturday tea time, and then Sunday will be, race watch along, a race review, and then the incident analysis for Monaco will be, of course, on Monday lunchtime UK time, reviewing the incidents, and I'm sure there'll be plenty from Monaco. So yeah, from now until the day after the Monaco Grand Prix, that is what is coming up on the channel. And hopefully, if you are new to the channel, you'll subscribe for that content coming up. You can either subscribe by clicking subscribe on the bottom right of the screen, or going to my homepage and clicking subscribe and hit the notifications bell. Also, don't forget to hit the like button and comment down below what you thought of this video, and what do you think will happen at Monaco. Do you think Mercedes are going to dominate? Do you think Ferrari are going to be better than we think? Or do you think Red Bull can compete for the win? And what do you think will happen in the midfield? Let me know in the comments. And also, don't forget to check out my Discord server. We now have over 200 members of the Discord, and we are now marching towards 300 members, and it would be great to have you in that server. So make sure to go ahead and join that. Link below in the description. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110, and check out my website ChazzaHDF1 for more content like this. But guys, until my next video, which is Tuesday 12 PM for This Week in F1, and until the next podcast, which will be in 2 weeks' time, previewing the 2019 Canadian Grand Prix, and until the next stream, which will be Practice 2 watch along for Monaco, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.